Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the July 17th, 2024 Worcester Township Board of Supervisors Business Meeting. Would you please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? My name is Rick DiLello. I'm the chairman of the board. To my left is Lou Betts, who's our vice chair. To my right is Steve Quigley, who is our third member. Over on the side table in the front, we have Devin Ralph, who is our solicitor for this evening. And next to Devin, we have John Everts, who is our township engineer. On the back table, we have Christian Jones, who is our assistant township manager, and Jay Finnegan, who is our interim township manager. First and foremost, any informational items for the board this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to note again for the record that this meeting is being videoed for future broadcast. Additionally, the board met in executive session at 3 p.m. on June 24th for contract negotiations, on July 15th at 8:30 a.m. for personnel matters, and July 16th at 4 p.m. for personnel matters. And also, we would need a motion to add item C, which is a motion to approve a resolution in support of a $3 million DCED Multimodal Transportation Fund grant.
Thank you, Jay. So, guys, we need to add an item to a motion to our agenda, which is to support a grant application. We'll discuss it when that comes up, some of the details around that, but ultimately we need to make a motion so that we can get it added to the agenda presently. So I'm going to make the motion. I'll need somebody to second it so that we can add it to the agenda and discuss it when it comes up under the motion section. So I'm going to make a motion to approve a resolution for a $3 million DCED Multimodal Transportation Fund grant.
And I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. So the motion passes and that agenda item has been added. Next up, we have public comment. And we do ask that you limit your public comment to 5 minutes. Does anybody have any public comment for the board this evening? Seeing none, we'll move forward. First up, we have our official action items. We're going to start with the consent agenda, as we always do. First and foremost, I'll ask if any board member wishes to remove any items from our consent agenda this evening.
No.
Okay, then I will entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion, we approve the official action agenda, the consent agenda for June 19 work session minutes, June 19 business meeting minutes, treasurer's report, and other monthly reports for June of 24, and the bill payment for June of 2024 in the $507,981.27.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next up, we're going to start with, it's going to be a motion to approve a resolution for the 1543 Trooper Road lot line change. So, John, what do we got here? I know last month we did the first piece of this, and this is the second piece. Why don't you, but for the residents who were not here, why don't you sort of give us a quick recap and we'll move forward.
Sure. Thanks, Board Chair. So in front of you today is a resolution for a minor lot line adjustment for 1543 North Trooper Road. This is for a large parcel that's called Whitetail Farms. The proposal is to adjust the lot lines to allow for a driveway to the larger parcel. There's two parcels that are along Trooper Road, and they will be in better conformity after the lot line adjustment. There is no development. It's just a lot line adjustment.
Okay. Is anybody here regarding that particular application? Bob, do you want to, so if we could ask you just to come forward, just in case we have any questions, if you'd have a quick seat. I know we had this, and we had some discussion on this last month. Does any board member have any specific questions? And I might ask you just in your words, just a quick recap of what's taking place and make sure we understand fully what's happening.
It's basically a lot line adjustment between two property owners, Posen on the one side and Whitetail Farms on the other side. There was a roadway that was constructed. It was not on the client's property, so they went there, they've purchased the rights to it. We did the lot line change. The next thing we'll do is get the plan recorded, and I believe that the actual engineer's letter is a clean letter right now.
Yes. Reviewed it 3 times, and the last letter, there was all the technical aspects were resolved.
So you're comfortable with everything regarding this, or are there still items that have to be completed?
No, everything has been completed.
Okay. And we're just sort of cleaning up the 2 lots. We're not creating
There's no land development at all. It's all lot line.
just paperwork,
Yep.
in essence. Steve, any questions?
Mr. Blue, are there any plans for the property? What's,
No, absolutely not, nothing.
just cleaning the property up to the
Just trying to clean things up a little bit. And we understand that there will be some bills from the township engineer and the township. If you can get them garnered up, then I can make sure that my client pays before you sign the plans.
I have no problem with it, Mr. Chairman.
Lou, any questions?
As long as all parties are satisfied with your drawings, and John's accepted it, and everything works fine, I'm happy with it, yes.
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution for the 1543 Trooper Road lot line change.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can we get a copy of the signed resolution when you have an opportunity?
Of course.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Blue, part of the resolution, I believe you were provided with a copy of it. There's an acknowledgement by the parties. Do you have that signed document?
I can get it signed tomorrow. He's coming up from out of town.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So next up, we're going to have a motion, which is going to be a motion to authorize the interim township manager to execute an agreement for traffic engineering services concerning an intersection and parking restrictions on Church Road. So Jay, I'm going to hand this to you first tell us a little story, and then we'll discuss and move from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The township has received calls relative to larger vehicles parked along the Church Road at the intersection of the Wheat Sheaf development. The engineer has gone out and looked at it, and there are some deficiencies with allowing large vehicle parking in that stretch. And I believe you might have some residents here that would like to offer comment when you so choose to.
Okay. So if I understand correctly, though, so the traffic piece is sort of the first step in the puzzle. That we can't just arbitrarily do something until we've taken. So what we're discussing and agreeing to tonight is the traffic engineering work that needs to be the first step. And maybe you could talk a little bit about what that.
Sure. The first step would be the traffic study done by the township's traffic engineer. The second step would be engaging PennDOT, who approves or denies traffic control devices and signage within the Commonwealth. So the township could support it, and PennDOT could not allow the township to place those signs. Then the township would need to pass an ordinance that enforces the signs after their placement, and then the signs would go up. So it's a multi-step process.
Right, but what we're agreeing to tonight is the engineering piece, so they can go out and sort of confirm and validate sort of what their initial eyeball view of the situation was, and do the more technical review, and then we'll pass that along to PennDOT along with our recommendations with that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions, guys, on what we're discussing and doing here?
Mr. Chairman, this is an item that comes up quite a bit before the township, regarding either stop signs, speed limit signs, no parking signs, with the problems around the school, the neighborhoods, looking at putting no parking signs up during certain hours. Well, the neighbor down the road wanted it, but the neighbor whose property to go in didn't want the sign in their yard. So signs are always a tricky matter. This has been an ongoing problem in that neighborhood for years. I think it goes back to the design of the project itself, the apartments over there. I think we have concerns about fire apparatus making turns in the street and the width of the road over there.
Right.
So it's a problem, turning out that the way it was laid out or approved by the township could present some problems. And the road wasn't probably made for these accessory vehicles parking there. So I'd just like to hear from the neighbors, if anybody here from the neighborhood over there, to find out where it is, because we don't put signs up very quickly in Worcester. We don't make many changes in signs in the township very quickly. So, it's not really in their development or in their neighborhood. It's really on an accessory road that we're looking to change, which could be problematic. I don't know really who else would use that road except the residents leaving the property. So they have a vested interest in that problem there.
So, let me ask the question maybe differently. Are you saying you want to hear from any residents you might?
Well, I'm just curious, we hear from the township getting letters in occasionally or complaints and stuff that, with the people coming in and out of there. And I guess it makes it a tough to access the road. And, safety has to be a major concern. I'm not saying I'm against putting the signs up or doing the road impact study, but to hear from the people, they've sent some letters.
Yep.
It hasn't been that great over the past couple of years, but I guess maybe a new resident moved in there. I'm assuming it's a resident who's parking a truck there on the auxiliary road.
Right.
Creates a problem. So, are there any residents here that could?
Okay, we got a few. So,
Are you all in favor of it or not in favor of it? In favor of letting the trucks park there?
so hold on. So
Tricky.
typically, the mechanics is typically we'll make a motion in a second, and then open it up to public comment so people can comment then, if you want to do it that way, or
Well,
other
that's fine. We'll
times
do
we
it
can
that
just
way,
let them
right.
chat way.
Yep.
Then that gives you, so ultimately, so folks, the way that process is, we make a motion in a second, we don't vote, we then open it to public comment, and then you can come up and say either I support it, or I don't, or however you sort of want to respond to that, and we can factor that into our decision-making. So if you'd like to, unless you want to make some comments first.
It's really easy because it's my end of my neighborhood area. So that development was put in, I think, somewhere around the 1995 era. And when they developed that, it went through land planning. They increased the size of Church Road, and it was an over 55 community, I believe, or I don't know if it was age restricted. But for a number of years, it was fine. But now, obviously, the box trucks start showing up. So now people can't see going left or right out of the neighborhood. So now I get it. So we've been here almost 30 years. Land planning didn't figure out the parking issue, and it didn't develop until, I guess, obviously 30 years later. So now I really don't want to restrict the no parking, but again, the commercial vehicles are, again, this is a hard one. So how do you restrict conventional cars and light pickup trucks, if you will, SUVs, but not commercial vehicles over 15,000 pounds, 17,000 pounds, box trucks, U-Hauls, something like that, because that obstructs your view and line of sight. There's a curve to that road. So this is where the board, I think, needs, again, more common sense. Like, we can't say no to everything, but if they're going to park some cars there, say you're having a party and you want to park neighbors' cars there, I think that's acceptable. Again, we don't want a fleet of U-Haul sitting there every day. So that's my comment. And again, I'd like to hear from the neighbors too. So I don't know, process.
So here's where governmental process meets, is you're going to make a motion, Steve's going to second it, and then I'm going to open it to public comment where they can share their thoughts, and then we'll decide on a vote.
I'll make a motion that we approve a traffic study for the Church Road Wheat Chief Development Area. Engineering services concerning the intersection and the parking restrictions on Church Road.
I'll second that.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor? And for folks who have never been here before, if you want to make public comment, you come up to sit at the table, jot your name down, and then you speak into the mic and you share your thoughts. Sir, I'll take you first.
Mr. Chairman, as that young man moving up to the table, we've had a problem with signs in the township around the high school. And really, one of the problems is the state police enforcing it. And I guess we've been the manager, the staff has been in contact with the state police. But we have to understand, the state police aren't local police. And their job isn't to write tickets in Worcester, as well as we've been told over the years, their job is not to sit on Fisher Road with radar guns when people complain about the speed limits. So this has been an ongoing battle over the year
Sure.
with the state police, with the neighborhood behind the high school, with all the parking problems there. The state police essentially said, we're not your neighborhood police officer. We take care of major things. We're not going around Worcester and writing ticket violations. So we can try this, do it, but Worcester Township does not write tickets.
Right.
So we're going to try to do the best we can and make you aware of that situation. But in the proximity to the school district, we were told before that there's one state police officer rides a large area of Worcester, Skippack Township, and there are times not to be spent getting out of the car writing tickets. So, and that's where Worcester has been in the past. It's just not an easy thing to do. We can put the signs up, but sometimes they're not enforced by the state police. So, thank you.
You're up.
My name's Mitchell Wexler. I live at Wheat Chief Village now for 25 years. And
Sir, can you sign your name in so we have it for the record?
yes, I
You did?
yes,
I can't see.
And basically anyone that knows that area, a lot of times in the morning, the cars that if there's a traffic pattern, they come right down Church Road kind of quickly because they're already annoyed with the traffic. And once they make that turn going towards Germantown, they're at the entrance of the Wheat Chief Village in a few seconds. And right now, you're talking about anywhere from 2 to 3 large trucks. We used to call it box trucks. Basically, it's the cab of an 18-wheeler, which are tall and completely block the site unless you really have to come out into the intersection to look down the street properly to see these cars flying down the road. And it's absolutely dangerous. I've witnessed a couple near accidents in the last 2 years because it's really, I think in the last 2 years it's become noticeable, a problem. We had a neighbor that was parking on the other side towards Germantown. We asked them to move. It was a larger van and he moved and there's no problem with that. But it is these large trucks that are parked to the right side of our entrance.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Mitchell. I appreciate that. Does anybody else wish to make public comment?
Rick, is there more than one truck parking there? So is it from the same gentleman or same owner? So there's multiple,
I think it's 2 different.
okay, maybe if you can, I'm just curious, they have multiple trucks that are parking there.
Right. So you can come forward.
Hello. My name is Matt Anderson, and I'm a resident at Wheat Chief Development. I am the one with the one box truck. I called The reason why I'm parking there is because I did have my truck parked somewhere that I was paying monthly. They had a rash of catalytic converter thefts. So just so happened in that place where I spaced that I had my truck, I was the only one that didn't get stolen for some reason. Right now, there's a back order on catalytic converters. And if you get your catalytic converter stolen, it's so high of the cost, it's you have to take out an insurance claim. Before I parked my car there, I called the borough and I told them, would you have any problem with me parking there on Wheat Sheaf Lane? I forgot the gentleman's name. I think it might have been James. I'm not sure. And he said that would not have a problem with me parking there, but he said the residents probably would, which probably is the issue. So one day I had a state trooper come to my door, and he said there was various complaints about the situation. And ironically, he said he's just here to make a report out or whatever. And one time before, a state trooper just told me, he said, just to move the truck back, because I had it parked all the way up towards the turn. And he said, no, I don't. He said, just move it back, center it. So the following trooper came that had the complaints. He said they haven't complained that they're turning out, they can't see. And ironic, the trooper said he ain't had no problem turning out there. He said he had plenty of time to turn. He said he could see. And there's some neighbors in the that I talked to in the development are saying the same thing. They don't see no problem with it. They're able to see, they know it's there. They do what they have to do. So we just have a tug of war against people who feel as though it shouldn't be there, or people that don't want it there. Then I had one lady say she can't see the grass across the street. So it's like the gentleman told me, he said there were probably complaints just by the borough because he said he ain't had no problem with it. So initially now, and it was only temporary, I have been looking for a spot. I haven't had it there for about at least 2, 3 weeks now. So I'm currently working on trying to move to, I don't, trying to accommodate everyone, but I had to put it there at that time.
Fair enough. So Matt, I'm going to offer just a couple of comments to that and sort of this little, so the step that we're taking now, so we're not, we're not saying, well, we agree with them or
Right.
what we're saying is we're going to bring an engineer in to come out and the process to take a look at it from all the different angles to make it, and then they'll be able to start to make a determination that says, yeah, this sight line is of concern from this corner or that. They'll be able to give us the right information. We don't even have the authority today. We couldn't just say, put a sign out there. Like, even if we said, hey, this makes perfect sense, let's do it, we can't. Like, we need to do the engineering piece, who will give us feedback to say, yes, we see some issues, or no, we don't, or something in between, and then that information gets passed along to PennDOT. If we said, hey, we'd like to make some form of change involving a sign or striping or anything, they ultimately have to say yes, no, or in between. So the outcome tonight it literally all it allows us to do is to put some engineering in place to take a look at it from all the different angles to help make that determination. But what they might find is, hey, if somebody's located in spot A, that's okay, but B, C, D, and E are a problem. So then you might potentially have to carve it up a little bit, where there's an opportunity for some parking, but not all parking, or there might be some restrictive element that we need to look at, as Mitchell was saying, in terms of, some trucks are higher than others, or some trucks are bigger to the front, so there could be some elements there. But unfortunately, we can't even make that determination
I got it.
today. But that's sort of, just so you understand, we're not when the information came to us, the township staff sort of evaluated and said, hey, we had the engineers sort of take a quick peek and said, yeah, we probably should, we haven't looked at it. We need to do this traffic engineering service to, and that's the crossing of the Ts and dotting the Is. And where that goes, to Steve's point, it doesn't race to enforcement. It's about, but the first step is to sort of agree that, yeah, we'll spend a couple dollars to have the engineering done, because we certainly have a concern if there's a safety concern. I mean, we have to take that seriously, even though you might get a different viewpoint resident to resident. We now need to kind of have a neutral party in the engineer to come in and say, yes, no, or in between. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Perfect. So we appreciate the comments. If anybody else has public comment they want to make on this issue,
I think Rick stated it fairly well. It's a slow process. We have to hire an engineer. Rick stated it very well. Worcester, even though we're the township, we don't have the authority to go out and put up no parking signs. Once again, the township or the state police won't enforce it. And to the PennDOT issue, I can only speak from my personal experience. I've been waiting for a title change for 5 months for them. And so we all may be dead before PennDOT works on the project. I hate to tell you folks that, but it works. The wheels in Harrisburg work really, really slow. So we'll do the best we can. And I think Rick said it so well that they'll do the sight lines. The whole road may not be closed off, but they'll come out and do it for the purpose of turning left or turning right, and wouldn't really concede. To try to be fair for everybody, we certainly understand your problem. I said we sit here, and as small business owners, we understand the problems that a small guy has trying to make a living, and where do you park a truck? And certainly with the catalytic converters and things, we all would probably do the same thing if we're in your situation. But the inconvenience of other people, we have to look at as a township of a whole and try to do the best job for everybody concerned. And I think that's what we're aiming to do, to try to help both parties. And I want you folks to know that the township takes your concerns very seriously. They work on them, but their hands are really tied in a lot of different ways. It's just the process is slow moving sometimes, and we understand that. So thank you for everybody coming out with that problem.
okay. Do we have any additional public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Okay, so next up, we're going to have a motion to, how do we articulate that? It's going to be a motion regarding the grant application at this point. So
This our resolution number?
it's going to be resolution number 2024 dash, does it have another number on the end there? Do we have it? We have the resolution in our packet.
It's just blank. It's 2024 dash.
It's -9. 9.
Okay. Okay, so the crux of this item is there's a grant application that needs to be submitted by the end of July. We talked about it a couple of months ago. It ties to, it's sort of the first step in what is potentially a multi-step process on the Valley Forge Road project. And this is phase one, and it's a grant application we're putting in for $3 million. And ultimately, the resolution is simply saying that, we support the submission of the grant for $3 million for this particular project. It also has a couple of mechanical items where it notes that Christian Jones, that one of the staff members will have the ability to sort of manage the grant from the township perspective. You, Lou, and I are named. If you're fortunate enough to get the grant, there's often things that need to be signed by the supervisors. So it's sort of the mechanics of that. I don't know if it helps. I don't know if it hurts. I don't know. We're just sort of passing it so that we're saying we're supportive of it, and
We're making an application.
Yeah.
for a grant. So we're not spending anybody's money. We're just making an application for a grant for resolution 2024-9. Multimodal Transportation Fund grant of $3 million from the Commonwealth Financing Authority for the Valley Forge Road Corridor Improvement Phase 1 at Woodland Avenue.
right.
I guess we're starting at Woodland Avenue and then add down to Stump Hall Township Line traffic light. And this will take a number of years, I'm sure, but this is just the first step of grant money.
Correct.
I made that motion, 2024-9.
Okay. Thoughts, ideas?
Once again, when you get involved with the government, everything seems so easy, but it's a complicated web we weave with this, and it just becomes something we thought would be so simple, just we didn't know we have to invest as much township money in it, but we don't start with a grant somewhere, we don't have a chance to move the ball down the road. And it's a slow-moving process, so, you know, traffic in that intersection, we have a chance to do something there. It's a problem, especially if you travel that road, cars turning one way or the other, it's just a nightmare. So I have no problem with, you know, moving forward with it.
Got a second?
You want to second it?
Second it.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, next up, we do have an other business item, and it was just, so I want to take a couple minutes to talk about the environmental engineer, sort of the consulting, so the consulting work that we did and sort of where I can update and where I can't, you know, in terms of that. So we engaged, let me back up a sec. So at 2974 Germantown Pike, what's used to be the Dubner property, there were some tanks that were removed across the fall. There were 2 gas tanks. There was a couple of heating oil tanks. We as a board, you know, we're all concerned about the environmental issues over there. What we wound up doing was we engaged with an environmental engineer to review that, to review sort of that process. That was sort of the first leg. We talked about it last month. We did not agree on ultimately hiring an environmental engineer at last month's meeting. For those who were here, they saw that. For those who were not, but we did agree that it made sense to sort of start that piece of it. They're going through the paperwork. They're going through to make sure that the process that was followed all the regulations. They had some suggestions coming out of that in terms of additional copies of documents that they wanted to request from the applicant, if you will, in terms of that. There's still some questions that we might have as a board in terms of that, and I guess I'd like to have both your thoughts. I mean, I think there's still ongoing sort of environmental concern there, but this was one piece we could do that we could sort of get arms around as a starting point, and then we can determine, you know, sort of where we would proceed from there. I mean, the good news is, at least initially, the initial feedback we got back was that it feels that the process that you're supposed to have was followed, but there are still some questions. You know, Steve, I know we've talked, and Lou, you talked about, you know, sort of when the tank came out of the ground, was there anything still in the tank, and just sort of what was it, you know, if there was something that was still in the tank in terms of that. So I know there were some questions on that.
I don't know where to start.
No,
First of all, that's the great gateway to our community over there, that corner at the beginning of Worcester. And as I sat here, I was thinking, it looks like North or West Philadelphia. I'm just a little surprised that the company did what they did and stopped. It's fine, knock the building down, but it looks unsightly. And I've complained about it time and time again, about the refuge that's left there, but it doesn't go anywhere. We've also have questioned, based on some senior citizens in the township that have told us 60, 70 years ago, they remembered all the tires and stuff being burned on the property. And we certainly know a lot of cars were stored there for years as a junkyard with the fuel, the transmission fluid, and all the other problems associated with a junkyard, and that stuff goes somewhere. And the board hasn't been pleased with the information we've got regarding the environmental study. People ask me questions. Someone from the County Planning Commission addressed me today about a situation, and they said they have no idea. Nothing has come before them regarding the project, even in a preliminary stage. I'm a little surprised at that. All those things being said, we hired an environmental engineer a month ago to come in and look at the tanks that were taken out of the ground and the situation regarding that. We got the report back, and it sort of clouded that they predated certain government regulations, and they were allowed to take the tanks out. There was nothing in the tanks. Well, I was called to that site by some residents in the township in the pollution business, and I watched the liquid run out of the tanks that I was told had nothing in them. And it sure smelled like gasoline to me when I was on the other side of the street. And I don't know. I guess my nature of my personality, sometimes I just don't trust people. There's too much things happening that we want to make sure as neighbors, friends, residents, that a polluted site, and Mr. Betts could speak to that probably a little better than I can as far as the site there, that we're concerned about it. And we want to do the right thing to make sure everything's being done correctly. So that's what we're looking at tonight, to try to find some answers, someone to stay on top of the project as the ball moves down the field a little bit. But, we don't know. We get all this stuff from the government regulation saying E75292766 has been followed, and B749255 they followed, and is it clean or it's not clean? That's all I need to know. Was it checked out and approved for our sake and the residents' sake, especially people down the hill there in our neighboring township? They've had problems with the runoff there for years. So
Right.
it's something we need to have professional help with to watch over the project. I'm not qualified to do it, so you have to turn to the professionals, and that's what we're trying to do here tonight. Engage someone to look into the project. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So I'll second the idea that Steve was there, I was there at the same time. When they removed the tanks, yes, there was a raw fuel smell. The earth is black. It smelled like raw fuel. It was a mobile station. There's aerial pictures of this property. It's been a junkyard since after World War II, so it's almost 80 years. It was active till 88, then they had a deal, and then a lot of cars got crushed and removed in 88, and then they started back up again. A lot of tenants, and again, there's enough residents that were tenants that have stated that cars, oil, parts, tires buried, a number of things in the soil contamination. So I just need to do our due diligence to protect the environment. It is the slope downhill and towards Lower Providence. There was hearsay of excessive rain, that 100-year rain game, when, that black water runs down into, I think, I'm speculating that there was a neighbor's pool that got black water. And again, the other neighborhood that's just downhill that had, again, contaminated black water in their basement. So that'll all be corrected, I'm sure, as it gets constructed. But again, do we follow the rules in the environmental world that you have to remediate the soil to further the due process of, the respect to the environment and the neighbors, our adjacent neighbor, Lower Providence. So again, it just has to be done correctly.
So I think, well, let me add in, I think where it gets a little tricky, and I think where we're getting a little hogtied is, and forgive me if I use the wrong terminology, guys, and correct it, but so the site, they're allowed, when they came in, they make a decision, say, we're going to remediate, where they sort of are going to, the property owner, the person who's going to build there says, we need to remediate, we're going to remediate, and then they work directly with DEP, where they take actions to clean up the site, and DEP says, yes, you've met, to your point, and we crossed this T, we dotted that I, but did you, didn't you? I mean, it's hard to gauge. And I think what we're running into is saying, they're saying they did it. Some of the paperwork says they did it, and it doesn't, no pun intended, it doesn't pass the sniff test, when you were out there. So do does it make sense for us to hire an environmental engineer who can sort of sit in between there, who can, and it's always, look, we're spending money, and there's always a choice of spending money, and saying, is that a step to take that I can turn to somebody and say, well, listen, they said they did it, but did they really do it? And if they didn't, what action do we have? Like you were saying, you go down to the county and like everybody's, they're not pointing like this, but they're sort of doing this. I haven't seen it, I haven't heard it. Like it hasn't, at this point, a lot of the things haven't even come to our desk. Like we haven't even gotten on the plan. It's been with our planning commission one meeting, and then it went back to a lot of review letters and a lot of other things. So, we're trying to get in front of it. And I made the motion last month because I thought it makes sense to do that, but I'm driving a little blind with it. Like it's not like I have some great insight to environmental engineering. I just think that us having a resource could be helpful. And then it's just an ad hoc kind of a thing. We're not committing to a contractual amount. And we're just sort of saying, hey, is that a resource that we can tap into that can sort of be a bridge between there? Like this first step seemed to make sense because we had some paperwork, we had an ability to sort of have them go back and review what took place and when it took place, and now we still, to your point, we still have some question about what really came out of that tank, but past that, there's still the ongoing question saying, how do we get the site a little more presentable, and then because you're still a ways away from anything. We haven't approved it. Our planning commission hasn't. Nothing's been approved, even though there's a plan that's out there. You could be quite a ways away from that even happening. So we'd like to be able to do something before then.
Mr. Chairman, what's the old saying, an idle mind's a devil's workshop? So I'm sitting here thinking, we go after people with high lawns and sightly yards and things like that. Is there anything in our bag of tricks in our book that says that a site that looks like that has to be cleaned up? Yes, no, maybe.
Good question. Well,
I mean, neighbors call about neighbors with a 12-foot grass problem, but we allow that site to sit there with 2 feet, 3 feet of junk for months at a time, and when there's no action. I'm just, once again, fair is fair. I'm just can't understand how that can sit there like that.
So let me hedge a little on that, Steve. So I know in our community, we have in our bylaws, we have, I'll call it a sort of nebulous clause that in essence says you have to maintain your property to a reasonable standard to your neighbors, to those sorts of things. I don't know if at the township level we have something, but I would say that we probably do. I mean, we certainly have some things about maintaining lawns when they get up to your point, to a particular height. We certainly have something in there. I don't know. I don't want to put the solicitor on the spot, and I don't want to put the township staff on the spot specifically, but I'd say it would be worth looking at that. Certainly would be an action we could take if it sort of crossed into an area.
I got one more.
Sure.
And if I could ask Bert Hines, could you come up, please? Because you made a comment in the past about they was burning tires in the past. They would have the monthly tire burning. Now, the residual of burning tires in the earth, the residual, the soot factor, and if you could restate what you saw or witnessed, or when you
This
were...
goes back a long time. I grew up here in Fairview Village, and Sunday, back in the 50s, it was routine that cars were burnt, and there were just billows of black smoke all day. And I can still remember my mother grumbling that she couldn't do her laundry on Sundays and hang it outside because of all the black soot and the black smoke. And you could see it very clearly. I mean, given the elevation of the property, people from far and wide could see it. We lived up at where the Nazarene Church is now, and it was very clear from our place.
Common once a month, I mean...
Probably, it wasn't every Sunday, but yeah, probably once a month.
all that residual tire rubber soaked into the earth.
And it was
it wasn't just burning one tire or so. I mean, they would get piles of tires, stack them up, and then light it up. And you would just get this huge column of black smoke and fire going up. And
That goes up in the air. I get the smoke. I'm talking about the residual that goes into the earth. I mean, I don't think that's ever.
and that was just common practice in the 50s.
Yeah. So I just want that noted that, yeah, I mean, that property has its history of soil contamination, if I go that route. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks, Bert.
Well, Mr. Chairman, once again, it's a commercial for the township supervisors. We've yet to really do anything with that project. I mean, we haven't talked about it, haven't voted on it, haven't discussed it because nothing's really come before the board. It just sits there and we're being accused of doing this and that and the signs are up around the township. But for the folks, the understanding is they have a by right to put the apartments up. So we're just sitting here being the official on the sidelines. You know, the apartments, it's zoned for that. So that really can't change a lot, but we as a township can make sure they dot their i's and cross their t's and make sure it's a clean site. And from what Bert said, and Lou being a neighbor there and talking to neighbors behind there, I just can't imagine that stuff just disappears over time. You know, the stuff that was burnt there, it goes somewhere, and not all of it goes up into the air. So that's what we're concerned about, the environmental issues for our township as a neighboring township. And I think part of the deal is when you buy a property, you have to clean it up. So that's what we're trying to do tonight, making this motion going forward. We're taking the property very seriously. It's not something we're
Right.
trying to back out of, but we're trying to be good representatives of the neighborhood.
So would either one of you be willing to make a motion that could be seconded that we could hire an environmental engineer? I mean, we're not putting a dollar amount. We're just sort of getting that resource. We've used them for a contract now, and then we would continue to use them sort of as we need to and as we look for some direction in terms of that. I mean, I think the resource would be helpful. I mean, I don't want to put it out there and have neither one of you sort of on board with that either. And we certainly can also instruct the staff to kind of go in and say, all right, well, let the general beautification, is there anything we can do to sort of say, hey, look, this is an eyesore. You know, we need to address some of that. So and again, I don't know, I'm not sure what's in there, but we can certainly look to see if that's an avenue as well. But bigger picture, we're worried about the environmental stuff. Thoughts?
We did commit, detention manager committed to do a minimal study, evaluation of what was submitted. So you're asking to further this, and I don't know what step before they submit any more plans or anything that was required by DEP and the other three-letter alphabet soup guys to perform a third-party maybe evaluation of soil samples or whatever. Again, I know a little bit because I own a property with environmental history. It took 23 years to remediate that property. 23 years, and it was a gas station. It got certified. 23 years. So if you're going to tell me, and that's 5 times the size, 10 times the size, I don't know our next step. Do I want to commit to a certain engineer? I think we got to evaluate more engineers to see who's got history with a site like such as this, not just anybody that's done a number of gas stations, remediation, brown sites, whatever. I want to do a little more research on the right guy, if you will.
Right, that's fine, but we still have steps that we can do in terms of the work they've done. There's open questions. They didn't complete their work. You know, there's still some open questions that we can still sort of work through that piece of it. But I guess I think we all agree that we need some help environmentally, and I want to make sure that we get it done quickly enough that that we have the resource. And look, I'm happy to evaluate as many as we think we need to. We had an opportunity to do a piece of it with one particular engineer that I think did a good job. And certainly we got to talk further with them about the piece that they did to see if there's some logical steps we can take out of that. And ultimately, I think we got to get to a spot where where we hire that resource, whether it's them or whether it's, to your point, something else. I think we need to hire somebody that can sit in that role. I mean, there's not taking any action. We're still a little bit away from the taking some action, but I think we need to move fairly quickly to kind of get that done, ultimately. So,
Devin, is your firm familiar with anything of gas station closures and remediation of environmental sites?
I am definitely not an environmental engineer.
I'm not saying you were, but has your firm ever dealt with?
Yes, we have been involved.
Okay, so there's been a number of engineers I'm sure you've dealt with over the years. Maybe we need to research to see. This is a particular site that it's 14 acres. It's got a long history. It's not a gas station. It's on a 1 acre site. So I just want to do a little research to see if we get the right guy.
do you have any more direction you want to provide on the topic, Steve?
I think we have to do something. We have to move forward. I'm not sure, as Mr. Betts said, which direction we're in. I think if we make a motion tonight to move in that direction and, get some quotes of what it's going to cost us to do that, but I think we have to start moving on it. I think we have to be ahead of the game we have to be on the offense rather than on the defense. And I said, because there's been nothing ever submitted to us. We don't know. And the information we get back that the site's clean, it's hard for me to believe it's clean.
Well, sure. And look, the practical thing is that we have a resource that you can use
Right.
for sort of while we're bridging to that. I mean, so folks, just so you understand, at a certain point, there's a dollar amount where you have to put things out to bid, and you have to, but small consulting projects like we engaged in, we have that capability right now. We have the capability with an environmental engineer right now to do that. That's not an issue. It's more thinking bigger picture that if there's some more funds that need to go to that, then spending money, and we as a board just need to vote on that, specifically in doing that. And I think that does make sense. Again, if we want to interview some more candidates to get to that spot, I think that's fine. But ultimately, we do have a resource that we are using now that gets us done to do some of the things. And then if something happens faster than anticipated, we can move quicker on that. But I think we want to be in a position where we could vote on that, certainly.
Make a motion to move forward with it, just to at least get the ball started.
So do you need some direction, Jay, on that?
If I could just make a suggestion and following up on Supervisor Quigley's comment, there is nothing preventing the developer from already have done a phase 1 and a phase 2 and not have submitted it to the township. So technically, they could come in tomorrow with plans. And to Supervisor Quigley's point, it's better to be on the offense than the defense. And in my opinion, kicking this can further down the road is not a good idea. We've talked to an engineer. You can interview, and if we have to go to the whole RFP process, you have 60, 90 days for bringing someone on board, where if you have one today, you're ready to receive the documents and evaluate them and ensure that it's done properly. If you don't think it's done properly, you have an expert that can tell you, no, go do this and go do that. So in my opinion, your best bet is to engage an environmental engineer to protect the township.
Mr. Chairman, once again, it goes back to when that project was done or started over there. They knocked the building down, the restaurant. No guards, no fences, nothing to prevent any pollution from escaping. Then they knocked the house down. No preventative measures, no fences, no nothing, no that. Then they start then they take the gas tank out of the ground. No prevention. It was a one-man show. The guy get off the backhoe, jump in the pickup truck, back it up, back. I was like, really? And then they start knocking down the building, which is in a foot and a half of Valley Forge Road, with no fences, no precaution. So this has really been I'd be careful what I say. We need someone to watch over them. And I'm not in a position, apparently, that the people we had in position I don't know whose job it was, but it wasn't taken care of. And that's our concern, that moving forward, that we're making sure things are done right. So whatever it takes to do, I'm in favor of it.
Right, but you're not ready to appoint somebody tonight. You want to, that's, okay,
I'm requesting the attorney.
That's fine.
To do research to give us options.
fair enough. Okay, you good with that?
Yeah, I think we should move forward with something.
Well, if we move forward, we can appoint someone tonight, but Lou doesn't want to appoint somebody specific.
Well, I guess
Wants to
again,
get a couple more.
for Mr. Betts' position, I guess we have to move ahead with it, but what's the price we're going to pay? Are we reimbursed by the builder? Can we go back part of his escrow account when he has an escrow account to get reimbursed for the expenses we spend on this?
If you have an environmental engineer in place, similar to anything to do with the development that has to do with engineering or the solicitor's office, it would come out of an escrow account. So the township wouldn't be expending any of their resources, but you need the expert in place to be able to perform those duties.
Thanks for that clarification. So, as you folks heard what the manager said, it doesn't really come out of our pocket. It comes out of an escrow account. So we have to be diligent about spending township money, but it won't be our money. We're hopefully spending their money. So I'm in favor of moving ahead with something to get started.
But you're saying you want to have a couple more names? I did. Okay. Okay, so we're not going to vote on it tonight at the end of the day, but we would like to be able to be in a position to move on it as rapidly as we could. If we can have it ready for next meeting, that would be the preference, certainly, so that we can vote on it. In terms of that, in the interim, we can continue to use the resource we have, but then we'll look to either permanent with that resource or pick a different resource, but be in place to do that in our August meeting. Could everyone work with that timetable if we think? I mean, I certainly can.
I agree.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay. So there's no specific motion that we have to make there, but we'll be looking to vote on it in the August meeting to formally appoint somebody. In the interim, we'll continue to work with the resource we have and have engaged already. So we do have a resource in place, and we'll just either make that resource more permanent or we'll bring somebody else in to have that role taken care of. So there's no motion, there's no vote, there's no nothing there, but the next item is public comment. I suspect somebody might have a comment or two on that topic. Ed, and then Bob.
Edmore Worcester again. I'm really glad that you guys are very concerned about that. I mean, you guys know, everything we heard from Bert and from all you guys, and the water runs downhill, and my sister lives in Lower Providence, so, reason to be concerned. I'm a bit confused, though. Last month, at the supervisors meeting, there was a resolution to choose between two environmental engineers. I believe it was Benoni and AET, and the resolution was put on the was put out. Mr. Doyle, I think you said for Benoni. Lou, I think you said for AET. We couldn't get a second, so the motion did not pass. Tonight, it sounds like we're looking at yet a third or fourth or fifth. No, Steve, I see you shaking your head. The direction was from Lou to the township solicitor to determine who other right guy is out there. So that says to me that those two were put on the table and aren't the right guy. I'm just confused why now we're going from a resolution that couldn't be adopted in the June meeting to something we think is going to be maybe adopted in the August meeting. It's 60 days.
It was done already. The study's been, Pinoni was hired to do this.
Were they hired under the guise of what was proposed last month?
So they were hired for a specific task that we're using, and there's room for us to use them for other things, but if we want to more permanently do something, then we need to.
And you told me that in an email exchange I had with you. I followed that up saying, what steps did we have to do to get a permanent assignment? I never got a response to that from anybody. So I'm curious, what are we gonna do now? It sounds like we have to wait. I asked in my email, if we had to wait for the next Board of Supervisors meeting in order to get somebody assigned. Now it sounds like that's exactly what we have to do, only it's not happening in the July meeting. It's gonna happen in the August meeting. I'm just concerned. I hear on one hand, you guys are very, very concerned. On the other hand, I hear yet another 30 or 45 day delay.
We have somebody in place, Ed. I mean, we do have somebody in place right now, but you're right. I mean, we would, in a perfect world, we would have a motion and a second and a unanimous consent. You know, part of what we're trying to do is get unanimous consent on it. And if there isn't a second, so the challenge is if we make a motion, and I've been doing this for a few years, and most of the time a motion gets a second. If a motion doesn't get a second, it dies on the floor. That's just the governmental process. So the next month you start again, and so that's why I asked earlier, and look, I respect on both sides, I respect them both, but we need a second to have any motion. That's sort of the mechanics of
I
it.
understand
But either
the
way,
process. I understand the process. I really do. What I don't understand is this specific process where it seemed like last month it was a choice to hire one of two engineers to do the full consulting assignment, and that was not done. And now we're kicking that down to next month.
well, we're trying to get to a point where we can agree on the engineer and we can just move forward with it.
Okay.
And I still support the engineer that I last month, and I respect that if we want to talk to a third person, again, there's a temporary, in essence, it's like sort of having a temporary road and you're trying to build a permanent road. We do have a road there. It's not perfect, but we're also trying to move.
Again, I understand.
Respect.
Okay.
Yep.
I just hope that the next time we have there is a conversation about it. It's that we have somebody who's going to shepherd the township from beginning to end through this process, because you're right. I certainly am not qualified. You guys have admittedly said you're not qualified. So we need somebody there. It's a big deal.
And I agree. And once again, you asked a question, I'll give you an answer. I personally really wasn't happy with the answer I got back because, you know, in part of the thing, the tanks were drained, it was loud, and I'm thinking drained. I saw the stuff running out of the tank myself, so that was the response I got for my money. The tanks are drained. The tanks weren't drained. So I just questioned the whole procedure. And the fellow doing the research, he wasn't there either. You know, so he has to take the information from the environmental people who did the cleanup. And, you know, Mr. Betts and I both watched the soil come out, or the liquid come out of the tanks into the hole, and 2 minutes later, the backhoe operator just came in and filled the hole back up 12 feet. And I'm thinking, I saw that. That wasn't, there's a problem here. And, you know, you can either have a dog or a pit bull. Which one do you want? And that's what, I'm looking for the pit bull.
Right. Not to make this, elongate this or make it more argumentative. But that all the more reason that we need somebody full-time as soon as possible. For every reason that you just said and a plethora of others. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Bob?
Smiling. You're smiling.
Happy guy.
You are. I don't know.
Bobby and Dormore Fester. Just briefly on a couple things. The first thing is in your workshop meeting, on the agenda, it is a zoning ordinance amendment discussion. And so I didn't have the pleasure of joining you for that meeting, came in late. But similar to the comments that I've made last meeting, it would be tremendously helpful if in the lead up to these meetings that some more information is provided. So the only thing that was available for that meeting is the agenda. There's no packet that was available. If there was a packet that had the issue that you were discussing, then I would understand what that was, or if there was a little more verbiage there as opposed to, you know, just here's the activity. So that would be helpful, and then I can, as well as others can make the decision whether they need to show up at the meeting to kind of put that in there. I realize you're not voting on anything, but it certainly would be important to have that. So I'm going to sound like a broken record every time, the information is not provided. I'm going to continue to try to ask for more information that's helpful. The second item is in the, and I apologize, I missed this last meeting, in the package for this meeting, in the, I'll call it the update of the expenses by line item. Last month, this is on page 5, under fire protection, hydrant rentals, year-to-date expended is a negative $12,161, which is unusual. That would suggest that the township received a payment or a credit. So I'm curious. So you're currently showing that you're on the percentage of expenditure, you're at minus 39% of what your budgeted activity was. It doesn't seem to make any sense to me. I'm just curious what that is and trying to get an answer without having to file a right to know.
So I don't have the answer off the top of my head, Bob, but we certainly can take note of that and make sure we get you all the details as to what so you're getting the summary and whatever the detail is behind that explains why that particular line item at present has that.
There definitely could be a logical, reasonable answer. I just don't know what it is, and I'm trying to avoid having to file a right to know. So
Fair enough.
curious to know what that is. Just a comment on the discussion of, I just need to get the address, Church Road and that traffic. So there's been any number of conversations in the past where people have voiced their concerns or comments about people parking business vehicles on residential properties or in front of residential properties. And I'm not quite sure what is going on over at Trooper Road, and I understand what you need to do, but I'm just likening this to Bustard Road. I'm going to guess this is Taliesin Township. Bustard Road between Kribel Road and Sumneytown Pike. There's a development. If you were going from Kribel, you cross over the little bridge heading towards Sumneytown. There's some kind of development on the left-hand side there, and you will see along that entire stretch, trailers, trucks, all kinds of vehicles parked there. I don't know if they have a similar concern or issue there, or if those are people who live in that development, and if they have a HOA that prevents them from doing that, and that's their solution. But just a comment that maybe you guys want to reach out to Taliesin and understand what's going on there and how they're addressing it. And so that it's not from a safety standpoint, but maybe there's some way that you could piggyback off of, and maybe that doesn't concern people and that's just the solution, I don't know.
Fair enough.
And then lastly, on City View, again, I'll just make a comment. I have many thoughts on that, but want to refrain, just as a sidebar, I am a member of the Planning Commission, and I don't want to say anything that would be later construed by the developer as to having anything negative. But my only comment would be, has anybody reached out, and maybe you guys have, reached out to the developer to express the township's concern about the aesthetics or some of these other things? And you're talking about ways of addressing it and what you perceive to be grievances or shortcomings, but has anybody reached out to the developer? I mean, ultimately, they're going to be before us and before you. I would think that they want to be putting their best foot forward, and maybe they'll be willing to address some of the concerns that you have, as opposed to looking to have the hammer in your hand before you go knocking on the door. Maybe just reach out beforehand, and maybe you can at least start that dialogue. And maybe you've already done that. If you haven't, maybe you want to consider it.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Bob. Does anybody else have any public comment for the board this evening? Seeing none, then I'll call the motion to adjourn. Thank you all for coming.